Afternoon, friends. Welcome to the Wealth Lab podcast for this week. Scott, how are you?
Mate, I am well. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. Happy Friday. It's a beautiful thing.
Right, we've got a big podcast today. What have we got on, Phil? Get through the agenda.
Well, mate, I'm going to have a bit of a chat now. Listen, I know probably about 2 podcasts ago I promised that I wouldn't talk about cash flow and budgeting again. But mate, I've had a couple of really cool cases that I've been working on and playing with some new tools, and I just want to show them off. So here we are. We're going to talk about cash flow and budgeting again, or more specifically, we touched on the debt snowball and debt avalanche a couple of podcasts ago. I'm going to run through an example of a debt snowball. So that'll be me today. And for you?
And why is that? So dear listener, why should you stick around? Why should you keep listening?
Well, look, it's just going to give you some really good practical skills if you've got a bit of debt you want to knock off, and you want to build some savings in the process. So this is just a practical example of something that you can apply in real life.
Or you've got some kids, or family members that themselves have got a bit of debt knocking around that you can educate yourself and then go and help them with this strategy as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Exactly right.
All right. I am going to run through what on earth a third-party research form is. Why are they important? Why do we do it? It's a real pain point when you, as a future client, who are listening to this, are going through the process. We do need to conduct appropriate and suitable research into your existing investments, whether that's superannuation or other. And one of those key elements is a third-party authority form. We refer to them as research sheets internally. I'm just going to go through a little bit of information on why we do it, why it's painful, and how to make it a little bit smoother for everyone involved. So let's kick off.
Beautiful.
Debt snowballing.
All right, let's do it. Now, this is not an actual client case that I've got to share, but very well could be. And it's a tool that I've developed in working with clients to help sort of lay out a plan for knocking off some debt. So, in this particular case, my imaginary client here has a number of small debts and also has a need to build some savings. So what we've done here is build a repayment plan essentially for them based on the debt snowball theory, which if you don't remember from our prior podcast, go and watch it. But very quickly, the theory is that we apply any surplus cash flow available to paying down the smallest outstanding debts first. And then that over time, then as they're paid off, we apply the repayments from that to the next debt and so on, so that over time you're accelerating.
Let me say, when you say surplus income, is that at the beginning of the month, at the end of the month? Where at what point when do I consider income to be surplus?
Yeah, great question. Look, I work with clients on however they manage their money. Typically working with the client's pay cycle. So, for most people that's probably fortnightly. Some people it's monthly. But this particular example that I've got built here is based on fortnightly. I think it's important to just apply it however you manage your finances. There's no sense if you get paid fortnightly trying to think quarterly or something like that. The other thing is, in terms of surplus income, typically if you're someone that's got a number of small debts floating around and very little savings, you probably don't have any surplus income.
Yeah.
So step one in this particular case was trying to find some. I'm trying to find where we're getting a little bit of extra money, although this could equally apply to someone that has no surplus but is meeting their repayments. Right. So I'll talk through that as we go through the example.
And for those people who are listening, what we have is we've got a fairly basic spreadsheet. It's called the Snowball. It's a key element that we extend to our clients who choose to engage with us, the cash flow planning. There's a number of other sheets available. We've built this internally. We like to use it, and we've got it here. You can also search for one, or you can choose to engage us as well. So, Phil, can you just zoom in, please, a little bit, just so that we can see it? So, I'm going to call it out. So, specifically, this hypothetical client would have had an afterpay, a Zip, and a few other bits and pieces, so that there is some buy now pay later lending, as well as some credit card, as well as some personal, as well as some miscellaneous HECS debt in here as well. So we've just kind of got a whole mishmash. And what Phil has done is he's organized them into categories based on the size, and working from left to right, the spreadsheet has the smallest one, which starts at $250 and goes all the way up to $7,000 at the far end. So the net debt of this client is about 15 grand of personal-ish debts, something like that.
Yeah.
And then debts 1 and 2 are, so debts 1 is $250, debt 2 is $500, debt 3 is
Close. Debt 1's 500, debt 2 is 1,000, debt 3 is 1,800.
right.
Debt 4 is 2,500, debt 5 is 7,000. So to explain what we're looking at in the spreadsheet, each different coloured section relates to a different debt. First column being the repayment amount, second column being the outstanding balance. So to talk through how this works practically, the first step, in this hypothetical debt, uses the example that the repayments on this were actually $200 a fortnight, not 250. We've dug through the budget. We've had a discussion around what is negotiable and what's not negotiable, and we've managed to find $50 a fortnight that we could stop spending on discretionary expenses that we could direct to additional cash payment, to additional debt repayment. Right, we can all find $50 a fortnight. Most of us can. It's not a huge amount of money, for me. Maybe I don't get a carton of beer that fortnight. I don't know, but you could find it if you look hard enough, and if you want to achieve this badly enough. So we found an extra $50 a fortnight. So we've now got $250 a fortnight to repay off this debt number 1, which is the smallest outstanding debt. Now, if you look at this spreadsheet, every fortnight tells you what repayments you need to make to which debt. So the first one, that's where we've applied our extra $50 surplus, so $250 a fortnight there. Everything else is just still on their minimum repayment amounts that are required for that debt. So even if you were paying extra on some of these, if you're applying this methodology, I would say reduce everything to the minimum and apply the surplus to the smallest debt first. So you can see fortnight number 1, $250 to the small debt, then $100 here, $120 here, $150 here, $250 there.
And those are all the minimums on the other ones. So there's
all the minimums
in total. There's five different debts to different providers.
It's perfect, exactly right. Yeah. So the idea is here, debt number 1, we've got $500 outstanding. We've paid $250, paid another $250. Now there's nothing outstanding. We move on to debt number 2 in fortnight 3. So
today's just let's say the 1st of January. Let's say this kicks off 1st of January. And then so fast forward to the 14th of January, what happens then?
Yeah, so then we've got this first debt paid off. If that was a credit card or something like that, the first thing I'd be telling you to do is make sure it's cancelled as soon as it's paid off, so you can't draw it back up. Then we're moving on to the next debt. So you can see those first 2 fortnights, we've just made the minimum repayment, but now we've got an extra $250. So we're kicking the repayments on that up to $350.
Love it.
3 fortnights down to $100 in the 3rd fortnight. So we're going to pay the remaining 100 off that to clear that debt. And the $250 we've got left over from our $350 is going to a savings account. Now, the reason this is structured this way, and this would look different for any client that I'm working with, but the reason I've structured it this way in this particular example is that one of the issues we've had in paying off credit cards in the past is that keep drawing them back up, keep worrying about not having cash floating around, not having an emergency fund, and needing to keep access to credit. Very hard to pay, if you don't cancel a credit card and you're running a pretty lean budget, very hard to sort of get rid of it. So the idea was here, we've freed up a bit of cash flow. Let's get a little bit of savings put aside to give us the confidence that when we pay off the next credit card, we can cancel it. So that's the theory or why I've done this here. And like I said, it's going to look different depending on the circumstances for who I'm working with. But just for the purpose of the example, we've got 4 fortnights here. We've now got $1,300 in an emergency account. And we can move on to paying off debt number 3.
So essentially, there's a few elements that makes this work. So first of all, this is a 12-month debt repayment plan. So you do need to be committed for 12 months, and this is like a diet. It could last for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you sort of start falling off. So the best spreadsheet in the world is irrelevant unless you've got a coach helping you, supporting you, moving you forwards. And this is what Phil was saying to this client was when she hits certain marks, to make sure that there is an email sent, maybe the 6-month point or the 12-month or wherever that point is, that you're staying accountable. So if you are going through this strategy, create a buddy, either that's your either your romantic partner or a friend or just anyone who cares and wants to see you do well. Tell them you're doing this, show them the spreadsheet you've created yourself. And then that then is going to create a degree of accountability as well, so that you have told someone else, which means that they are going to be expecting and hoping that you continue to stay on this path of paying down these little debts.
Yeah, 100%. And look, the whole reason that the debt snowball works as a strategy is it's a psychological trick. Because you can constantly see progress by clearing your smallest debts first. You're seeing progress all the time. If we did this same payment plan but applied it to highest interest rate first, these are all going to be coming down in little bits here and there, and you're not going to see progress as quickly. It makes it harder to stick to. If you're super disciplined, then cool, go for it. But it works because you can see it working. And what I would say is give someone access to the spreadsheet. Mark off your repayments and give someone access to go and check up on you.
Love it.
Nothing like a bit of accountability. So, this particular plan, we're looking at 22 fortnights, all the small debts cleared. We've got an extra $870 in fortnightly cash flow, which is a massive amount of money. And we've got $5,000 in the bank as an emergency fund.
It's fantastic.
22 fortnights of discipline and suffering. I think that's a pretty bloody good outcome.
It's also, I like this method as well, because you're also reducing the number of online logins you have to deal with. I think every fortnight at some point someone has to make a new freaking login. And the beauty of physically closing each account each time is I think kind of cathartic. It also, following this process, has the clients creating a cash buffer. So we have seen some people that they hang on to the credit card because, what happens if in case I need it? I've got some higher spending. Well, that's actually built into this little process of creating a day-to-day savings that you can draw it down should you need to, and free you from that sort of maybe that habit of keeping the credit card open, even if you know you don't really need it, but you just think, oh, it's a nice to have. Well, actually following this process will give you a point which you don't need to do that.
Cash in the bank, your washing machine blows up, you're not having to go down and chuck it on interest free or whatever going on. Cash is there, you can pay for it, rebuild your savings with your $870 cash flow you've just freed up, and happy days. So there you go. I just thought that was worth sharing. It's a good practical example of how you can apply this for yourself.
Love it. All right, let me throw one at you. What happens if I just got a car loan and a mortgage?
Yeah,
we could probably, I don't know, what happened if we just got two debts, car loan, mortgage? What do I do in this scenario? Or is that completely different?
Look, I think that's probably completely different. If you did want to, you're probably following this process anyway, because you're going to be paying your car loan off before your mortgage, unless you bought some sort of stupid car. But in that particular case, to me, I would probably be just more looking at what's got the lower interest rate, and I'd be directing my funds to the higher interest rate of the two, which is likely to be a car loan, or they could be very similar, just depending on how it's structured. So, that was a
good response.
Yeah. It wasn't a very exciting example, that one.
No, it wasn't, but I thought I'd throw that out with you because it's much more, that's very common as well. The car loan, home loan option.
Yeah. I think
right.
On that too, just, one thing I commonly see people do is go and finance a car with a bloody personal loan or something at 14%, when you might have been better off just tacking it onto your home loan. And when I say tacking it on the home loan, I'm not saying tacking it on for another 30 years. I'm saying split it off and pay it off in 5, but at a much lower interest rate. Anyway, that's a separate conversation.
Yeah. We did see a caravan. We did see a client 100% finance a caravan at I think 11 or 12%, which is on an $85,000 caravan. I think over 5. It was a bad deal, but at the same time, we don't give credit advice, but we can do compound interest. 11% over 7 years on an $85,000 caravan is $80,000 in interest. So the net outlay is $160,000, which is a lot, especially for a depreciating asset.
Yeah, you'd want some good holidays in it. That's for sure.
For $160,000 over 7 years, what's that? It's 18. Geez, there's a fair few European or American trips in there too. But anyway, different story. All right. Thank you for that, Phil. If you have any questions or would like to hit Phil up specifically with your spreadsheet and compare, he would love that.
I do love a good spreadsheet. If you've got a much better one, I'd love to see that too.
Yeah. So feel free to reach out. And what we'll move on to now is I'm going to have my little note on research sheets. So as you are going through the process of engaging us to work with you for a financial plan, there will be some questions that we ask around the assets and investments that you hold. Most common is your superannuation, but you might also have some random share accounts or some managed funds. And we can't just basically take your word for it. So if you go, yeah, no worries, I've got, just pick your number, 300 grand in super, and it's in the balanced option, that's not enough information for us to actually conduct a reasonable type of research into that investment. We really need to do a line for line comparison, and that will involve us reaching out to the super fund with your consent to complete our due diligence or research process, and that can take up to 2 weeks. It's detailed. It takes between 5 and 6 hours of Wealth Lab time between the advisor, the client service officers, the researchers, and the power planning team. And it's really detailed. And the reason why it's detailed is because it helps ensure that we get a suitable outcome for you. When we make a recommendation, it is going to be in your best interests. And the way that we do that is we see, okay, here's what you've got. Here's what we think we can do for you. Let's match these together. Let's compare them, and let's put them in front of you to show you. So that can be one of the slower parts when it comes to engaging us, because sometimes some people go, well, why can't you just tell me what I should be doing with my insert X investment or insert Y super? Well, unfortunately, we need to go through the process of doing a sufficient type of research. Just if you're looking for just simple general advice, we can provide that, or you can just find that in a book. If you're looking for detailed personal advice, which is, what do I do with my super? What's the best investments that I should be doing for someone my age with my risk profile at my stage in life? Well, that's the type of conversation that you shouldn't be shooting from the hip. It should be a consistent, slow process that considers where you are right now, and where you want to be at the future, how you want to bridge that gap, which is why it can take some time. So be prepared that there's some documents you got to sign. We've migrated to using Adobe Sign. We were using DocuSign, but now we use Adobe Sign. We find that works quite well. So just managing your expectations. And I've just got a Australian super research sheet here. It's maddening. Every single super fund has a different process.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to play ball. So what I have up on my screen here is I have the Australian Super one pager. I'll grab another one in a minute, but just for the purposes of those, it's purely just what your name, so last name, first name. If you don't know that, we're in trouble. But assuming you know what that is, there's going to have an email address. Now, if you're a couple that shares the same email, now this isn't a problem for our Gen Ys, but if you're a boomer and with love, the two of you are sharing the same email address, this does present an issue. So just be prepared for that. We'll also ask for your tax file number, just so it can match you against your ATO records, as well as your member number. So those are things that we need to know when we go through the process. Further to that, if you've changed addresses recently, it's important that you update that address with the super fund, or you give us the address that they have on file. So these are some common areas that cause issues. Also, if you've been, say, for example, recently married or split, and your last name is different to that what's held by the super fund, that's another area that they're going to reject these forms. So it's really important that what they have here on file is what you're giving us, so that we can then have you sign this form, submit it to the fund, and then we'll be able to conduct our research and due diligence process.
Yeah, I think that's really important there. The address one, making sure names match, all that sort of stuff's very important. Especially some of the funds appear to be maybe having some capacity constraints at the moment, and they'll boot them out of the queue quicker than you can blink, and then you go back to the start of the queue if we've got to update anything. So having that stuff right up front, really helpful.
Yeah. So to summarize, looking to engage us, that's great. Just make sure that when you do log into your existing investment or superannuation account, that your maiden name or married name is correct and is matching, at least your driver's license is matching the documents that you're going to provide us. Make sure you've got your tax file number ready to go. Make sure you've got your super member numbers ready, and that the addresses are correct. So, for example, if you're using address from a different spot and it's all consistent, that's fine. Just give us that consistent spot, and that we'll submit that under the address that the super fund has on file. So that's it. Bit of a boring one, but bloody important if you want us to do our job.
Yeah, it is very important. And look, there is, sometimes it can be, from someone that doesn't understand what we're doing necessarily up front, it can be very much like, why can't I just give you my balance on my investment option? There are a million different strategic things that we could be considering that we need like detailed info for, that you wouldn't even know what to ask for if you rang the fund. So yeah, it can be painful, but bear with us, it's worth it.
Yes, that's it. All right, that's all from me this week. Phil, thanks so much.
Yeah,
Listeners,
beautiful. Thank you.
been a pleasure. See you next time. Thanks, guys.
See you then.